My parents threw my bags onto the driveway and locked every door while someone stood behind my curtains watching. Phones came out from every direction. I didn't beg. I didn't panic. I pulled out my phone and called one person. 15 minutes later, a car pulled up. My dad rushed outside screaming. Then he stopped. His face turned white. He stared at the papers, then at me. I'm Jessica Morgan. The first bag hit the concrete driveway so hard the zipper burst open. My clothes scattered across the hot pavement under the burning Texas sun. My second bag came flying down the brick steps, landing with a crack that echoed through our quiet street. My parents, Michael and Karen, stood at the front door with their arms folded, looking like they had practiced this moment for weeks. Behind them, through my bedroom window upstairs, I saw a shadow move. Someone was in there. Someone who wasn't me. Before I even moved, neighbors were already filming. Mrs. Patterson from next door. The Rodriguez family across the street. Even Mr. Chen from 3 houses down had his phone pointed right at us. Everyone was recording what my parents thought would be my breaking point. But I stayed completely calm. My fingers shook just a little as I scrolled through my contacts to a number I saved 6 months ago. Pressed call. The voice answered immediately. "Give me 15 minutes, he said. That's all he said. I sat down right there on the curb next to my broken suitcase and waited. The sun cooked the back of my neck. Sweat dripped down my face. But I didn't move. Exactly 15 minutes later, a black truck rolled up and parked right in front of our house. A tall man in a simple gray shirt stepped out carrying a brown folder. He walked straight toward me. "Jessica Morgan?" he asked quietly. I nodded once. He didn't say anything else to me. Instead, he walked right up to our front door and knocked 3 times. Loud knocks that everyone could hear. My dad yanked the door open, face already red with anger. "Who are you?" he yelled. The man didn't yell back. He just handed my dad a thick stack of papers from his folder. My dad's eyes moved across the pages. His face went from red to white in seconds. He looked at our house, then slowly turned his head toward me. "This story already has you hooked, doesn't it? Hit that like button right now." My favorite moment. When those papers came out and everything changed. What's yours? Drop it in the comments and tell me the exact second you knew revenge was coming. Subscribe so you never miss these real-life revenge stories that hit different. I stood on the sidewalk in my work clothes, dust covering my shoes from standing there so long. I watched as my dad pulled my second bag toward the door. He didn't carry it gently. He shoved it hard. It tumbled down all 3 brick steps and landed on its side in the grass. My favorite jacket hung out from the broken zipper, getting dirt all over it. My mom stood right beside him, her voice carrying across our entire yard into the neighborhood. "This house belongs to Emily now," she announced loudly like she wanted everyone to hear. "She's young, she's getting married soon, she needs stability. You're 30, Jessica. You can take care of yourself." Those words hit harder than the Texas heat rising off the ground. I looked down at my old suitcase with a fresh rip down the side. My grandmother Grace had given it to me years ago when I started college, her hands shaking as she pressed it into mine. "This will take you places," she'd said with her soft smile. A memory flashed through my mind. Emily's 21st birthday. The brand new red convertible in the driveway with a giant bow on top. My parents standing beside her, beaming while she screamed and hugged them. My own 21st birthday had been a homemade cake and a card that said they believed in me earning my own way. I rode the city bus to work every single day, 3 different buses, while Emily got rides everywhere in that shiny car. Another memory hit me. The summer Emily turned 19. The entire family trip to Hawaii that my parents paid for completely. Beach photos, sunset dinners, videos all over Instagram. I stayed home, working double shifts at my job to pay rent, and got a single postcard that said, "Missing you," in Mom's handwriting. The sun beat down without mercy, making the air shimmer and dance. Sweat ran down my back, but I didn't wipe it away. Across the fence, Mrs. Patterson came outside with a folding chair and a cold bottle of water. She set them both down next to me without saying anything at first. Then she leaned close. "Grace would never allow this if she was still alive," she whispered, her voice firm but quiet, eyes glancing toward my parents. I took the water bottle, felt how cold it was against my hot hands, and sat down in the chair. My heart pounded inside my chest, but I kept my face calm, breathing slow and steady. No crying. No begging. That wouldn't change anything now. More neighbors came out onto their porches. The Thompson family stood under their covered patio, arms crossed. Mr. Chen leaned against his fence, phone still recording. Others gathered at the edges of their yards, the kind of quiet crowd that forms when something big is happening on your street. Whispers floated through the hot air, too quiet to understand, but the tension was thick. The shadow behind my bedroom curtain moved again, then disappeared completely. I knew who was up there. Emily. My room. The room I'd lived in since I was 5 years old. The one with the window that looked out over the oak tree Grandma Grace planted when I was born. Everything about this moment felt planned. Rehearsed. Dad turned back to the door, Mom right behind him. The lock clicked loudly, a final sound that echoed in the quiet. Crickets chirped from the bushes behind our fence, the only noise breaking the heavy silence. I opened the water bottle and took a slow drink, the cold water sliding down my throat. My mind raced through years and years of small moments that led here. The extra chores I always did as a teenager so Emily could focus on her activities. The way holidays always centered around her schedule once she started high school. The quiet comments about how I was the responsible one while she stayed the baby. Mrs. Patterson stayed nearby, pretending to check her flowers but staying close enough to hear everything. A couple more neighbors brought out chairs and sat down on their own porches. Not getting involved but present. Watching. No one walked up to our front door. They just watched from their side of the property lines. Heat came up from the ground in waves, making everything look wavy and unreal. My shoes stuck slightly to the concrete as I shifted my weight. The rip in my suitcase caught the light again, a raw tear across the faded fabric. Grandma's voice echoed in my head from one of our last conversations. "Family isn't always fair, sweetie, but you protect what matters." I set the bottle down and rested my hands on my knees, sitting up straight. Whatever came next, I wouldn't give them the reaction they expected. The neighborhood held its breath with me, crickets singing under the relentless sun. The man knocked again, 3 sharp bangs that cut through the thick air. My dad opened the door fast, his face flushed and sweaty. "Who the hell are you?" he snapped, filling the doorway like he still controlled everything. The man didn't react. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, holding it out calmly. "I'm David Thompson," he said in an even voice. "I represent the legal owner of this property." Dad snatched the card, eyes narrowing as he read it. Mom crowded behind him, looking over his shoulder. David stepped forward just enough so everyone on the porch and beyond could hear him clearly. He opened his folder and started reading out loud in a clear, professional voice that carried easily to all the neighbors still watching. "Property deed recorded 18 months ago. Grace Morgan transferred complete ownership of this residence into a protected trust. The sole owner and decision-maker is Jessica Morgan. All previous ownership rights held by Michael Morgan and Karen Morgan were removed on that date." Dad's grip on the door got tighter. "That's impossible," he said loudly, then his voice cracked. "We've lived here for 25 years. This is our house." Mom repeated him, sounding confused. "It can't be. Grace never mentioned any of this." Then her voice changed, getting softer, almost pleading. "There must be a mistake. We can figure this out together." From inside I heard footsteps on the stairs. Emily appeared at the top, her face getting paler with each step down. She stopped halfway, gripping the railing tight, not looking at me at all. David continued without raising his voice, sticking to the facts. "The trust cannot be changed under Texas law. No modifications are possible without the owner's permission, which has not been given. Jessica Morgan has full legal right to enter the property immediately. The neighbors whispered louder now, pieces of conversation drifting over. Always was Grace's house, one voice said. Another added, she built it with her parents 40 years ago. Dad tried to interrupt again, pointing his finger. You can't just show up and... David cut him off calmly. The documents are filed with the county. Copies are available for anyone to review. He closed the folder with a soft snap. My client may enter her property now. Mom reached out a hand toward me like there was an invisible wall between us. Jessica, honey, let's not do this out here in front of everyone. Come inside. We'll work everything out. Emily finally made it to the bottom step, hovering near the doorway. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. I stood up from the chair, feeling every single eye on our street watching us. The air felt heavier than before, charged with something that couldn't be undone. Dad's anger had melted into confusion, his shoulders dropping. Mom's plea hung in the air, unanswered. David moved to the side, gesturing toward the open door. After you, Miss Morgan. The doorway I'd walked through thousands of times suddenly felt like a line drawn in the sand. Neighbors' phones stayed pointed at us, silent witnesses to whatever happened next. Dad blocked the entrance for another moment, staring at the papers in David's hand like they might disappear if he looked long enough. Mom whispered his name urgently. Emily backed up a step, finally meeting my eyes for a split second before looking away again. David waited patiently, the weight of legal reality behind every second of silence. I took one step forward, then another, crossing the driveway toward the porch I'd grown up on. The brick house loomed familiar but distant now, holding secrets I never knew about. Dad finally moved aside just enough for me to pass. His anger collapsed into something quieter. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. David paused, letting everything sink in, then continued in that same measured voice. Your grandmother acted because she was worried. She heard plans being discussed to sell this property to fund extended opportunities for the younger family member. My dad's jaw tightened. He glanced at Mom, then back at the lawyer. We were just thinking about Emily's future, he said defensively. A year abroad would give her real opportunities. Fair distribution of family resources. That's all it was. Mom stayed quiet beside him, her eyes getting wet, but her lips pressed together tight. She didn't defend anything. She didn't deny anything. She just stared at the ground between us. Emily stayed tucked behind them, arms crossed tight, saying nothing. The afternoon sun dropped lower, casting long shadows across the entrance and making the air feel even thicker. Heat rose from the concrete in waves, but nobody moved to escape it. A memory surfaced, clear and sudden. One quiet evening about 2 years back, Grandma Grace had taken my hand after dinner and led me into her small office. The room smelled like old books and her vanilla candles. She sat me down by a small metal box built into the wall, her fingers bent with arthritis but steady as she showed me the combination. Just in case something happens, she'd said softly, not explaining more. I thought it was just her being careful, a practical lesson from someone getting older. Now it clicked into place like puzzle pieces finally fitting together. David shifted his weight slightly. Grace Morgan worked quietly with legal counsel to protect this family home from any sale that might favor one child over another. Dad searched for something to say. She never talked to us about this. If she just said something, we could have worked it out as a family. The words sounded empty, even to him. Family discussions in our house had always gone one direction, and Grandma clearly saw it coming. Emily finally lifted her head a fraction, but she stared past my shoulder at nothing. No protest, no questions, just silence. The lawyer nodded once. Regardless of intentions, the recorded documents stand. Any other financial matters will be handled separately by the appropriate authorities. He didn't say more, but the hint hung there anyway. Dad's attempt to justify things faded into quiet. Mom's silence got deeper, her hands clasped in front of her now. Standing there on the threshold, everything came into sharp focus. Grandma hadn't been paranoid or mean. She'd been strategic in her quiet way. That metal box combination wasn't random. It was insurance passed only to me. The heat pressed harder as the sun dipped lower, turning the sky streaks of orange and pink against the clouds. Nobody suggested going inside to talk. The porch felt like neutral ground now. Or maybe nobody's ground. Dad rubbed the back of his neck, not making eye contact. "We thought we were doing right by both girls," he muttered more to himself. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Grace always did things her own way." Emily moved closer to the door frame, still silent, her usual confidence gone. David closed his notes calmly. "That completes the ownership explanation. My client will take possession as she decides." The finality in his words left no room for argument. Dad's shoulders dropped another inch. Mom blinked fast, turning her face away. I felt something shift inside me too. Not victory exactly, but a steady clarity taking hold. Grandma had seen the pattern long before I admitted it to myself. Those small preferences over the years hadn't been in my imagination. They'd been real enough to make her take legal action. Someone who'd built this house with her own parents decades ago. The wind picked up slightly, carrying dust across the steps. No one brushed it away. Dad tried one more time. "There has to be some flexibility here. Family property should stay with family." David interrupted gently but firmly. "The law recognizes the recorded trust. Flexibility isn't part of this by design." Emily's breathing became loud enough to hear, shallow and quick. She leaned against the wall now, like she needed something to hold her up. Mom reached out blindly for Dad's arm, finding it and holding on tight. The lawyer stepped back, giving space. "Remaining matters are for official channels." That ended it. The porch went completely still except for distant traffic sounds from the main road. Everything Grandma did suddenly made perfect sense. Quiet, thorough, protective in a way only she could manage. David cleared his throat once more. "One additional detail in the trust agreement," he said calmly. "A built-in trigger activated by any unauthorized action to block access to the owner, such as changing locks without permission. That automatically sent a notification to the Internal Revenue Service, flagging possible issues in past tax filings related to gifts and inheritance." My dad's face changed instantly. The last bit of defiance vanished, replaced by genuine alarm that widened his eyes. He gripped the porch railing harder, knuckles going white. Mom covered her mouth with shaking fingers, but she didn't blame me. Instead, she whispered almost to herself, "I only wanted what was best for everyone." The lawyer pressed on without emotion. "The IRS will now review every transaction related to this property for the last several years. Depending on findings, penalties plus interest could reach substantial amounts." Emily, who had been frozen until that moment, suddenly stepped forward. Her voice came out thick and broken. "I heard you both talking about the trust a few months ago," she confessed, eyes on the ground. "You were worried it might affect my plans. I didn't say anything because staying quiet seemed better for me." She finally looked at me, tears already falling. "Jessica, please give us more time. I'll talk to them. We can figure out how to share everything fairly. We don't have to lose this." I held her stare without looking away. My response came out quiet but absolute. "It's too late for that now." Emily collapsed into sobs that shook her whole body. She sank onto the top step, burying her face in her hands as the crying got louder, echoing off the brick walls. Dad staggered backward, one hand on his chest like the news physically hit him. True fear carved deep lines across his forehead. He started mumbling numbers under his breath, calculations of back taxes and fines he couldn't believe. Mom moved to Emily's side instinctively, pulling her into a hug while her own tears started streaming down silently. She rocked gently, saying soft comforts that sounded hollow against the weight of what just got revealed. Neighbors who had stayed started heading back inside. Porches emptied one by one, doors closing with quiet clicks. A few kept their phones raised from farther away, still recording, but the crowd dissolved. David stood patiently, briefcase in hand, ready for questions that never came. The full weight of federal review loomed over everything now. Years of filings reopened. Every transaction examined. Possible claims on remaining assets. Emily's crying continued, raw and desperate. She gasped between sobs, trying to form words that fell apart. Dad paced the small porch faster, stopping sometimes to stare at the lawyer like expecting him to take it back. He didn't. Mom held tighter, her own breathing uneven. The family picture they'd clung to fractured more with each passing second. I stood there watching the impact spread like ripples in water. No satisfaction. Just recognition that consequences finally arrived. Emily lifted her head briefly, makeup streaking down her face, searching mine for any sign of softening. Finding none, she dropped her gaze and cried harder. Dad finally spoke, voice low. How bad could this really get? David offered no guesses. That depends entirely on what they find. Mom whispered something into Emily's hair, too soft to hear, but Emily's sobs only got worse. The last neighbor's porch light clicked on as evening approached, signaling the end of the public show. Videos would spread privately later, but the live audience was gone. David produced one final paper from his briefcase and handed it to Dad. Official notice. You have 30 days to leave the property. Personal clothes and items only. No fixtures, no furniture claimed as shared property. Dad took the paper with